What you doing, guys? It's Mrs. Klein.
Hey class, it's Miss Burkles, and today we are on lesson 5 on page 65 in our textbook titled The Roman Catholic Church in Medieval Europe. And our guiding question is, how influential was the Roman Catholic Church in medieval Europe?
All right, just like always, you guys, there are some vocabulary terms. There's actually a lot of them for lesson 5. They are clergy, natural law, persecute, pilgrimage, religion, religious order, Roman Catholic Church, and sacrament.
Jumping right into the introduction, the church was the center of life in medieval Western Europe. During the Middle Ages, the church was a daily presence from birth to death. Christian belief was so widespread during this time that historians sometimes call the Middle Ages the Age of Faith.
All right, moving on to section 1, which is called The Christian Church Takes Shape. The Christian religion is one of ancient Rome's most important legacies. Initially, the Romans persecuted Christians for their beliefs. But in 395 CE, Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire.
At the start of the Middle Ages, all Christians in Western Europe belonged to a single church, which became known as the Roman Catholic Church. The church provided leadership and, at times, even organized the distribution of food.
All right. By the High Middle Ages, they had created a system in which all clergy members had a rank. The Pope, who was the Bishop of Rome, was the supreme head of the Roman Catholic Church.
During the Middle Ages, the church acquired great economic power. The church also came to wield great political power, and at times the church's power led to conflict with European monarchs. One key struggle involved Pope Gregory VII and Henry VI, the Holy Roman Emperor.
He was Henry IV. Okay, all right. In the winter of 1077, you guys, the Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV traveled to Italy in the castle of Canossa to beg forgiveness from Pope Gregory. Legend has it that the Pope made Henry stand barefoot in the snow for 3 days before he forgave him.
Sacraments and salvation in the Middle Ages. The church taught that people gained salvation or entry into heaven and eternal life by following the church's teachings and living a moral life. Failing to do so condemned the soul to eternal suffering in hell.
Okay, the church asserted that receiving the sacraments was an essential part of gaining salvation. And you guys, the sacraments are the sacred rites of the Christian religion, and they are baptism, confirmation, Eucharist, matrimony, holy orders, penance, and extreme unction.
During the Middle Ages, religious faith led many people to perform extraordinary acts of devotion. For instance, most Christians hoped to go on a pilgrimage at some point in their lives. Pilgrims traveled long distances to visit holy sites such as Jerusalem, the place where Jesus was killed, and Rome.
You know what's interesting, guys? People still go on pilgrimages today. My cousin Jerry actually just went to Turkey. She went to pretty much like Constantinople and went to a variety of places where Paul had been, I guess, and wanted to go to these sites because they were things that were really important to her and her faith. All right, pilgrims went on these journeys to demonstrate their devotion to God, to perform penance for their sins, or to attempt to cure an illness.
A second type of extraordinary service that dedicated people carried out involved fighting in the Crusades. The Crusades were a series of military expeditions to the land where Jesus had lived, which Christians called the Holy Land.
All right. Also, now we're going to talk a little bit about the influence of art with the church and art and architecture. During the Middle Ages, most art was created for a religious purpose. Medieval art and architecture found their most glorious expression in cathedrals, the large churches headed by bishops.
The cathedrals constructed between 1150 and 1400 were designed in the Gothic style and built to appear as if they are rising to heaven. Cathedrals were visible expressions of Christian devotion. On average, it took 50 to 100 years to complete a cathedral, but the work took more than 200 years in some cases.
Holy moly. So that's a lot of work, and that means they probably were very big structures. All right, moving on to education. During the Middle Ages, most schooling took place in monasteries, convents, and cathedrals. In medieval times, the clergy were the people most likely to be educated. Beginning in the 1200s, cathedral schools gave rise to universities.
Ancient texts were greatly respected in the universities, but the church was sometimes uneasy about them. Thomas Aquinas, an Italian scholar of philosophy and theology, tried to bridge the gap between reason and faith.
Aquinas wrote logical arguments in support of his faith to show how reason and religious belief work together. For example, his concept of natural law stated that there was an order built into nature that could guide people's thinking about right and wrong.
Holidays. Medieval Europeans enjoyed many festivals and fairs that marked important days of the year. Most of these celebrations were connected in some way to the church. Two of the main medieval holidays were Christmas and Easter. Christmas is the day when Christians celebrate the birth of Jesus.
Easter is the day when Christians celebrate the resurrection. In Christian belief, the resurrection is Christ rising from the dead. You guys probably remember that from a couple of lessons ago.
Some men and women solemnly promise to devote their lives to God and the church, called monks, nuns, and friars. The man who developed the monastic lifestyle in Western Europe was Saint Benedict.
Okay, monks spent their lives in prayer, study, and work, and even attended 8 church services every day. Other duties included caring for the poor and sick, teaching, and copying religious texts.
Both monks and nuns joined religious orders. Each order had its own distinctive rules and forms of service. Monastic life was one of the few opportunities open to medieval women who didn't wish to marry. Women who became nuns lived in convents.
All right, now we'll find a little bit about friars. Some people wanted to live a religious life without the seclusion of a monastery. Instead of living in monasteries, Franciscan friars traveled among ordinary people to preach and care for the poor and the sick.
So guys, in our lesson summary today, we have the Roman Catholic Church emerged from the fall of Rome to play a central role in daily life in medieval Western Europe. The church takes shape. More than just a religious institution, the Catholic Church was the center of community life and acquired great political and economic power. All clergy had a rank in the hierarchy, from priests to bishops, archbishops, to the Pope.
Sacraments, pilgrimages, and crusades. The church's sacraments marked all the most important occasions of life, from birth to death. Many people expressed their faith by going on pilgrimages or fighting in the crusades.
Art, architecture, education, and holidays. The importance of the church to medieval people was seen in the art and architecture of churches, in education, and in holidays.
All right, and then monks, nuns, and friars. During the Middle Ages, Saint Benedict developed his rule for religious communities of monks and nuns. Other religious orders were founded too, including groups of friars such as the Franciscans and the nuns called the Poor Clares.
All right, you guys, that was our podcast on Lesson 5, the Roman Catholic Church in Medieval Europe.
By now, you should have a kind of good idea to know how influential the Roman Catholic Church actually was in medieval Europe. Don't forget to study those vocabulary terms, you guys, because we have a podcast quiz coming up. They are
clergy, natural law, persecute, pilgrimage, religion, religious order, Roman Catholic Church, and sacrament.
Have a good one.
All the best.